I had a recent guest on the show who was talking about the exposure of dust through the skin. And we know now some of the peptides, they enter the skin better than via injection just by using a cream. You can put testosterone cream on, and most mold toxins are very small cholesterol-like molecules. So they're small, they can enter easily through the skin. So I would say having no dust around your house is probably a really good idea, because you're going to either breathe it or roll in it, because that's what happens, right? But the percentage there, I don't think we know. And then eating it, I quit coffee for 5 years because I would feel anxiety when I drank moldy coffee. And that's the one crop in the US. There is no standard here, but there is a standard in the rest of the world. So then they send the moldy coffee to the US and then we drink it because it's illegal to sell in Europe or Japan. So that's one where, because I'm sensitive to OT, I can just feel the difference. And I'm kind of afraid to drink normal coffee. And I still, every now and then I'll go out and I'll have a cup of something that looks good. And 2 hours later, I'm like, God, I just want to take a nap. Like, oh, great, I got molded again. So I know we get exposure, and I found some studies on, the amount that's there. And so like, how do we bind it? How do we deal with it? Because you can't have zero mycotoxins in your food unless you're eating probably grass-fed, grass-finished beef, which has very little, because whatever they're exposed to from soil, they filter out. So other than that, you're probably going to get some, and you probably can handle it. But what I find, and what I want to go deep with you on, is that there are the toxins that directly inhibit mitochondrial function, so they lower your energy. And there's ones that cause damage to the lining of your nerves. And then there are some that mimic hormones, like the zearalenone I talked about before. Zearalenone is sold as a pharmaceutical drug for ranchers because cows get fat on 30% less calories. That means if you're in a house with the zearalenone forming species and you're getting fat for no reason, it's probably not because you're eating too many calories. It's because you're being exposed to an environmentally produced toxin that makes you fat. How do we know which of these different toxins anyone's dealing with?
We don't. The whole concept of mold toxicity is relatively new in medicine. We've only really started to talk about it 20 years ago. And like Lyme disease, medicine has not caught up with it. So the vast majority of physicians out there would not know what mold toxicity was because they've not read about it, they've not studied it, they're not even aware of it as an existence. So it's a huge problem, as you well know, and it isn't being studied in the way it has to be studied. So do we need a whole lot more information and quickly? Absolutely. Is that immediately likely? No. Our first job, Dave, I view this as my role right now, is basically to wake people up to the existence of mold toxicity. Once the medical world begins to embrace it, then we can go, oh, this is something big one that we've been missing. Now we have to really study this. But until our medical agencies that do research, NIH and CDC, and start looking at it, until they embrace it, patients really need to learn what they can, maybe from us, about what this is and our best guess as to how to treat it and our best guess as to how to live the healthiest life we can in this very polluted world that we live in.
What do you do to protect yourself from toxic mold?
I've had it, so I can speak about it as someone who isn't just studied it, but I've studied my body with it. So yes, it's a very real thing. First of all, just for listeners, I eat organic, as totally organic as possible. I have HEPA filters that operate in my house. My house is newly built and has an airflow system in it, so that it's not a tight box that's about to explode with mold. It's got that flow system going for it. Part of my answer here is mold affects us primarily by creating a type of inflammation that our immune system can't control. And so part of the issue is, how do we get our immune systems to operate optimally? So the more complicated answer to your question is, the other things that I do are also to help my mind, my spirit, my emotions, and my energies operate at a higher level. meaning I exercise regularly. I walk my dogs at least 2 miles a day. I do Tai Chi, Pilates, and my spiritual practices of meditation and other things um, all are designed to make my whole being as healthy as I can so that my immune system is in an optimal operating mode, if that's the case. So I think that's a very important part of what you're asking right now.
Yeah.
And I live in a small coastal town, so the air I breathe is sea air. So I've made every effort I can to live a really healthy but happy and spiritually attuned life.